I am recording.
I am recording.
Now, and Streamlabs starting now.
Wake up, everybody. Here is Never Free to Play, and we've got another Lo-Fi review for you this time on Halo Infinite's campaign. If you're looking for our impressions on multiplayer, we already did that one. The quick summation is, it's great. You should go play it. It's free to play. The campaign is not free to play. It is a standard $60 purchase unless you have Game Pass, because all Xbox, Microsoft games are now day-end release on Game Pass, which is how I've been playing it. So Halo Infinite is sixth big number entry in the Halo series, not counting some Reach and Halo ODST or some of the spin-offs like Halo Wars. It is also 343 Industries' third try here at making a Halo game, and it is, without a doubt, their best attempt by far yet. Not so much, while 4 and 5 Guardians both had issues, this is less about their issues and just more about how good this game is. So I'll start off with that. This is a really, really good video game and a really good Halo game. We talked about in the multiplayer how good the gunplay is. That all carries true when it comes to playing the campaign. Halo's always been known for having that buttery, smooth, jumping from headshots on grunts and the perfect balance of melee, gunplay, and grenades. And that carries through here and is perhaps the best feeling that I've ever felt it in a Halo.
I got a question for you about that, Sean.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the gunplay feels just as good as it does in the multiplayer. How does that work with can you speak to the AI in the campaign? Because we talked a lot about like time to kill and how you could be very tactical, especially in those tight quarters. Is it tactical like that when you're up against the AI, or is it more like you're mowing enemies down?
You're Master Chief at the end of the day, so you are, essentially an unstoppable force, and especially when you're up against, grunts and jackals, which are the ones with the shields. I mean, grunts, their heads are huge, and they're these little tiny guys, and you just pop them insanely. The one thing that I do miss is that the Grunt Birthday skull. I don't have it unlocked yet. Grunt Birthday is a skull that's been in all the Halos that whenever you get a headshot on the Grunt, it shoots out confetti and you hear little kids go, yay! And it's very, very, very rewarding. That's not there. So yeah, you're going through Grunts, but you will also at times encounter elites who have shields. You'll encounter various brutes which have shields and armor that you have to blow off. You are definitely way, way stronger than anything you're up against, barring some of the bosses and things like hunters. But whereas you are an unstoppable force, you're fighting much larger groups of enemies, and those sizes of the amount, or the size of the groups increases quite a bit as the game goes on. And so that's where it is you gotta be worried about, okay, I got a sniper jackal back there, I've got a bunch of grunts and regular jackals trying to duke it out with me, being led by a couple brutes, and they're all got different weapons and different things to count for, and they got different angles of attack, so you're trying to approach your fights in the best way. But also sometimes, like I said, you're Master Chief, and sometimes you got a rocket launcher and a battle rifle, and you're just going to brute force your way through a fight.
That sounds compelling.
Yes.
It's great. Oh my God, I love it.
Robert, what's been your experience so far?
So my experience jumping into the campaign mode after my foray back into Halo, which was our multiplayer review, and I'm terrible at it. And to answer the question about the waves versus strategy, you do have to know what you're doing. Because I tried to Dr. Brockle-Dirk my way through that thing, and it doesn't work. Okay, let me tell you what.
I do love that strategy, though.
Yeah, you got to know when to use your melee attack, especially when fighting brutes and elites. You gotta, especially if you're fighting brutes, you gotta knock their helmets off first, and then you gotta expose the soft skull underneath that will die instantly to one smack to the forehead.
Yeah.
Now, a thing that can help you quite a bit on achieving those well-timed melee attacks is our new best friend, the Grapple Shot. So the Grapple Shot is Halo's grapple hook type item, and it is a continuation of something we saw back in Halo 3, where Master Chief could pick up items, if you remember, things like the bubble shield and the repulsor. But whereas those both in the campaign and the multiplayer were single-use items, for Infinite, those type of items are single, or you might get a handful of uses. In the campaign, so you get about 4 of them. Like I said, you start off with the Grapple Shot, you unlock the other 3 as the campaign goes on. What's is cool is you're able to upgrade them over time, but they've all got independent cooldowns, and so you're able to kind of adjust them to the fight. That said, the grapple shot is by far the best, whether it's just for getting vantage points or hitting enemies with it and having it reel you in. Eventually, you get like you can do an electrical shock with your grapple shot, and that's so much fun because it disables the enemy as you near them. So it's added just like this extra little fourth branch to the gameplay, because since they're not single use like they were in 3, you always have them, and so now they're an extra consideration. And the grapple shot is by and far the large, because the large of those, because it really opens up. We already talked about in the multiplayer. This is a fairly mobile Halo with the ability to clamber, and it's just a little bit quicker than it's historically been. This adds a whole new dimension of mobility, and the maps are built perfectly for it. There's always kind of buildings and cliff sides. We'll talk a little bit here about the open world aspect in a little bit, and how useful the grapple shot is in that. The only fault I would have with it is, in order to swap out which of those pieces of equipment you're using, you got to hit right on the D-pad, and then you got to hit either up, down, left, right in order to pick which of the pieces of equipment you want. So you don't really have one set to a button in my case with the controller, your left shoulder button at a time, and that's a little clunky. Which
Can
meant
you
that
not map those changeouts to your back paddles, or you don't want to because you have those for other uses?
So I kept those for other things in order to keep my like the not have to swap off for swapping weapons and pulsing and jumping and all that. The other thing is those buttons the paddles can only mimic buttons on the controller when it comes to playing on the Xbox. So since I can't set a dedicated button to each of the 4 abilities, I can't do that. It just makes it a little clunky, and it would be more of a detriment if not for the fact that 90% of the time you want grapple shot anyways, and grapple shot's the one that's going to make or break most of your fights, and just is the most useful in fights. So it's not the end of the world. It's a small critique. It's kind of this aspect of there may just be too many options, and a controller doesn't have quite enough buttons.
Sure. Now, Robert, did you play with controller or mouse and keyboard? Because you were going back and forth on the multiplayer.
Yeah. I am now stuck back with the controller.
Okay.
Even though I still think that aiming is way easier with a mouse, the feel of Halo to me is right with an Xbox controller.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It's a console series.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, like I said, gunplay phenomenal. AI is pretty good. They're smarter than they have been in the past, but they're also not tactical brilliance.
Did you both play on standard difficulty?
So historically, I've done my solo plays on heroic, which is the difficulty that they tailor the game. They tailor the game to heroic, and then they back it down for normal and easy, and they upgrade for legendary.
Gotcha.
This time they tailored it for normal. So normal is kind of the equivalent, I guess, of heroic this time. So I played on normal. I only had a couple fights that were a challenge. I probably could have largely gotten away with playing on heroic if I wanted to. Normal was fun. It had enough of a challenge at times that I had to work for it, but I also wasn't going through the frustrations you go through playing through legendary, where it's like, all right, let me get killed about a half dozen times in order to figure out every aspect of this fight, so then I can plan it out. It was enough that I wasn't getting killed. I was having to duck for cover every so often, but it wasn't so punishing that I wasn't able to adapt. That I lost the opportunity to adapt on the fly in order to keep playing without having to reload. So, which is a downside of a lot of times on those higher difficulties.
So I have a question I'm going to target it to Robert, but Sean, I want you to answer it too.
Mm-hmm.
The real question for the game is, does it make you really feel like Halo? Like you really are Halo?
It's funny you say that, because just in playing the intro part of the game, it feels like Master Chief is back and is the epitome of military perfection. He is the incarnation of military power. And that's what is more classic Halo than Master Chief just being a badass. I don't know.
Sure. They'll talk to me a little bit about plot, because I need to know a couple things. How does it tie to the other Halo games without being too spoilery, because we're not doing spoilers, but how does it tie to the other Halo games? And then just from a character writing standpoint, what even makes a good Master Chief? Because I've only played the first game, and in my mind, I haven't played it since it was out on the original Xbox. I always viewed Master Chief more or less as vapid as Doom Guy. Like, he's just like, he is a military guy, and then he has to go kill the bad guy. So that's always been my...
So let me take the history back here a little bit, because that second question, one of the ones that is the answer to that is why this is one of the best Halo games, if not the best Halo game that's been put out. You go back to Halo 4, which was 343's first game, after taking over from Bungie. And Halo 4, for all of its other faults, what it did really well was it had this very impressive relationship between Master Chief and Cortana. Cortana being the AI who had been with you through all the previous games. And Cortana was basically going rampant. She was essentially, for an AI, she was going crazy and self-destructing. And you begin to see the depth of their relationship and how much he cared for this artificial intelligence. That was really the closest thing he had to a friend and a love interest. So Cortana is lost at the end of 4, and then she actually is reconstructed by some ancient alien Forerunner technology, and we are left at the end of 5 where Cortana has basically gone full rampant, and is now off. Basically has decided she's going to conquer the galaxy. She's going to rule the galaxy. She is going to take the mantle of Reclaimer that mankind is supposed to have gotten from the Forerunners. And so 5 ends on that. Now 5 storyline with because they bounce between limited time playing as Master Chief and playing as another squad, had a lot of issues, and it's interesting how they get around that, which is we are dropped into the middle of the end of basically that whole thing with Cortana. And so it is for all intents and purposes, it's resolved, and we are now existing in where there's a power vacuum that Cortana now held. Humanity was basically got their crap beaten in by her, and so they are fighting this force called the Banished, which has filled this power vacuum left by everyone else being weakened by Cortana, and are now exerting their control in particular on Zeta Halo. And so we figure out over the course of the game, and I'm being kind of vague here because I don't want to give a lot away, because it's pretty important to the plot, because you are dropped in middle of the story essentially. You discovering that over time is very important to your enjoyment. To touch on Master Chief here, Halo 1, 2, and 3, he is by all, you're right, he's essentially Doom Guy. He is a stoic killing machine in Halo 1, 2, and 3. 4, we begin to see him actually have some character development. I know some fans felt it went too far. 5 had a lot of issues, so I'm just going to skip over it. Here with Infinite, we are the perfect melding of that Halo 1, 2, and 3 stoic, unstoppable force Master Chief, but also we're seeing that underlying aspect of the character. It was interesting to me. So Steve Downes has always voiced Master Chief. He does a phenomenal job here. It may be the fact that he's 20 years older than he was when he first voiced him in Halo Combat Evolved, but Master Chief sounds old, and I think part of that is deliberate. This is a man who has basically been fighting for the better part of 3 or 4 decades in his life, and he's very good at it. He's very stoic in a fight, but there's an underlying aspect here that we began to see in 4, that this is a broken man who knows he's broken and is just kind of holding on and doing the thing that he knows how to do. And there are a couple wonderful scenes in this game that delve into that are just voiced phenomenally by Steve Downes, phenomenally by Jen Taylor, who plays several characters within this game and the Halo universe in general, and also by Echo 216, whose voice actor escapes me right now, but he's the pilot that we saw in the early trailers. Does that answer your question, Jason?
Absolutely, yeah. That's everything I wanted to know and more.
It is that aspect that we have the amazing combat and the focus on that story that we've seen that from the early Halos. But we're getting depth in these characters now that are great. I do want to follow up on what I said about Jen Taylor. So Jen Taylor voiced Cortana in all the Halo games. Cortana is an AI who's actually based on the brain of a Dr. Halsey. Jen Taylor voices Dr. Halsey in audio recordings we hear in this game. She also voices a new AI character called The Weapon. It is amazing because she's voicing all 3 of them in the game, and you can all tell that that they're all, because you got Halsey, whose mine was used for Cortana. It's not far to jump up the same voice actor. It was the same for Weapon, but they so you can all tell they're the same person, but they all sound so different. Halsey is this 60, 70-year-old scientist, so she's old. She's got some gravel in her voice. Cortana is very sassy and confident. And then the weapon is this newer, younger AI, and so she's got this little bit lighter bit to her tone, and she's a little more naive and free spirit, and kind of free spirited. And it's really impressive that Jen Taylor was able to so wonderfully voice 3 characters to the point where they're all completely distinctive. And she must have done some serious effort, because she's got a lot of line of dialogues as a result.
That does blow my mind, because I've noticed that in even like children's animation where I'm like, whoa, that's that person. I didn't recognize their voice. And I think part of it absolutely accolades to the voice actors, but then also to the audio engineer, because I'm sure that they also played a role in
also
giving that character.
The script writer, you change up their diction and their way of speaking a little bit to give them different characterizations. Robert, you noticed, that was something. Obviously, I've played a lot of Halo. I love playing the Halo campaign. So Steve, like the nuances in Steve Downes' voice acting to me jumped out at me right away. I don't know if you have the same feelings.
I pretty much stopped Halo after 3 until like now. So okay. I never got to what you were referring to as far as the fleshing out more of the character development for Master Chief. So I really didn't know too much about that. So that now I know, by the way, that put a lot of this new game in context for me. Thank you.
I guess the last thing we'll touch upon here is this is our first open world Halo.
That's what exactly my next question. Talk to me about in terms of not necessarily the plot, but how does that work when Halo is traditionally such a linear experience, and now we've got this kind of open world aspect to it? What's the loop, and how does the open world play a role?
So it's pretty interesting. If you go and you were to look at like past Halo games, a lot of the time like you would beat a level, and then during the loading screen, it was essentially implied that Chief was either getting in a Pelican or getting on a Warthog or just huffing it to the next level. But we would skip that because it would be it was considered the boring bits, and then you would just load the next mission. Essentially, the open world aspect of the game plays out for those in-between bits, but they're not boring at all. It largely works on this concept of, because the UNSC, which is the United Nations Space Command, it's basically Earth's space forces are up against the Banished, and so they've been fighting on this ring. So there's these UNSC forward operating bases that have been conquered by the Banished. You go back and you reclaim them, and when you reclaim them, they essentially are fast travel points for anywhere on the section of the ring that we're able to play Halo Infinite on at this time. What also happens when you unlock those is it gives you the location of what would be your checkbox activities in an Assassin's Creed or a Far Cry. So whether that's rescuing fellow Marines, or it's finding like high value targets or strongholds for the Banished, and doing all those, which are, and also you can find collectibles such as the data logs or the Spartan cores, which you use to upgrade your shields and your other pieces of equipment. You can find all those. They do some various things. So the high value targets are cool because it actually unlocks the ability to get special weapons that you can then unlock at your forward operating bases. Saving the Marines and wiping out the big bases, though, unlock Valor. What Valor does is at your forward operating base, they start off and it's like you can call in a pistol and a Mongoose, which is essentially Halo's ATV. As you unlock more Valor, you can call in better vehicles and better pieces of equipment, and also the basis, as you are now saving Marines, it unlocks additional personnel at the base.
Oh, that's cool.
What's really cool is like the personnel there, like, so you unlock the rocket launcher, like 100 Val later, you'll unlock a trooper with the rocket launcher. What's great is, if you want to go after a high value target or the strongholds or the next missions, which are, or the missions, which I'll get into kind of the lead in from open world into the missions here in a bit, you can now pick your starting loadout, which gets better as you do these activities, which is where the encouragement to do those activities. So like eventually I would call in a Razorback, which is a troop carrying version of a Warthog, where I could fit in 5 Marines. My base had 6 Marines. I loaded in all these Marines. So I had a guy with a rocket launcher, a guy with a sniper rifle, a couple guys with battle rifles, a guy with a shotgun. And then I would just like roll up to whatever we're gonna go do, and like they would just and just basically stare around and let my guys wreck the place.
That excites me for the multiplayer for the co-op campaign.
Oh, it'd be when so it comes, much fun.
Because that's the part I love about all these games. I mean, Far Cry, I'm trying to think. Metal Gear Solid 5, all the Shadow of Mordor games, like the Sniper Elite games, sneaking up on a base, figuring out its weak points, and then like tactically taking it down.
Yeah,
I love games that do that so much.
And with the grapple shot, you can get up to those high vantage points. You can figure out where the enemy snipers are before they see you, and then you can be like, okay, I'm gonna want to walk in here with a sniper rifle and an assault rifle, and I'm gonna show up in a warthog, manned with a couple Marines, and this is how we're gonna do this, and it gets to be pretty fun. Those strongholds, a lot of times they got gates, and so you'll infiltrate first. Like I would drive my crew up in my vehicle, like leave them around a bend, infiltrate, get the gate drop, go back, get my Marines, and then basically come on in a forward assault with my Marines a lot of the time. So it makes it fun, and because for each in between each mission, it moves you around the map, the areas of the map. Each area that, and so it kind of naturally leads you to, oh yeah, I want to grab this this forward operating base because it gives me a fast travel point next, the mission I'm about to do. And there might be one or two along the way, so you string them together. And so each forward operating base probably has an hour or two of, or maybe 1 to 3 hours if you want to spend the time finding, clearing the stuff around that at FOB, and then you move on. So it's not so long, and it's kind of nice because in the past when you play mission to mission to mission, most of the missions are pretty intense. The overworld, while going after high value targets or doing the strongholds can be, there's a lot of just exploring that allows the game to slow down, allows you to kind of settle back, do some of the activities, unwind, and then be fresh and ready to go. In the past, a problem I have with shooters is I keep playing them and I get tenser and tenser and I get worse as I play them. The overworld gave me time to unwind, so I was actually able to play longer without feeling like my performance is dropping off.
That's kind of nice, and it sounds like that loop makes you feel like you're having fun. You're playing the game, but you're also making progress.
Right, because like there was a point there where I was like, all right, if I can get these couple of things, I unlock a Scorpion tank, and it's like, all right, I want a Scorpion tank because I got to go. I went and looked at this area of the mission, and there's like hunters there. You know what takes out hunters really well? Freaking tank does. And so it made nice progression. I got near the very end, I actually got a flying aircraft that I could come in, which is great because if I want to go back and get some of the remaining collectibles that I didn't find on the open world, having it's called a WAS, a flying thing to run around and get them real quick is great. So it's nice that they put that there. It's pretty late in the progression, but it gives you something out once you want to come back at the late game in order to unlock stuff more quickly. So very, very, very nicely designed.
How are you approaching the game, Robert? I know you said you just got to the open world part of it, but are you finding yourself mainlining the game, or have you taken time to explore and smell the roses?
I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. I've just got to the open world part, and then that's literally where I stopped. So even though I'm interested in continuing the mission, like the main plot of it all, I know I'm very easily distractible, so we'll see where that goes.
I found it for the most part pretty fluid to do it. I mean, there are some of the collectibles and all that going out of your way and getting it, but like I said, the forward operating bases are pretty well placed. It's kind of just a natural progression to go, hey, I'm gonna go grab this one. It's essentially on the way to my next mission anyways, and it'll benefit me to be able to resupply there. And then nothing so like. I know there was a big hoopla made out of the fact that they reduced the map significantly. I think that's to the game's benefit. I liked the size of the map. It wasn't so huge that I felt like it was a pain in the butt to move around. Because otherwise you either would need a lot more FOBs, or each FOB would have been that much more spread out. And like I said, this created a really nice loop where it was a decent chunk of time to do stuff, but not so long that I felt like if I wanted to go do that stuff, it was seriously delaying me from doing the game. It all I thought flowed together very nicely.
Well, it sounds like it might be something worth resubscribing to Game Pass for.
Hey, I mean, it's one of the best FPS experiences I've had in a while.
I kind of want to wait for the co-op campaign though.
Yeah, if you wait for the co-op campaign, I will. If you can't find someone else, I'll be more than happy to play through the co-op campaign with you.
I would love that. That'd be amazing.
I do here, right at the end, I want to touch on. So there's mission. You've always got your mission objectives that the game is pushing you towards. What's nice is most of those missions, because you're heading towards usually some kind of structure or a base, and once you're in the structure or base, it's very much the classic Halo linear hallway, big room, having a big battle in here. classic Halo fun gameplay. But usually the start of that starts outside of that building or base or whatever you're getting ready to go into, and that's a lot of fun because I go back to the fact that I can then pick what gear I want to bring. It also means I can pick which weapons I want to bring into that mission. So I can come into that mission with the loadout that I want, start off that mission with the attack how I want it, and then progress into what is, the standard but still very well done Halo fare, linear missions and the bigger story beats. So.
Good deal. Well, are there any closing thoughts? You want to put a point on it? I mean, it sounds like it's a really nice experience, and any Halo fan that isn't gonna get too uptight about unlockable cosmetics in multiplayer, it sounds like they would enjoy this campaign, and that it would be worth subscribing to Game Pass for.
Definitely, this is without a doubt something that at a minimum rivals the original trilogy, and probably on a one-on-one fight beats any, has a good shot of being better than any game in the original trilogy. Whether or not the overarching story they're going for, since the game does leave with more story, it wraps it up, enough plot lines to be fulfilling. But there is more story to tell, and to see how that plays out is going to be rather fun.
Very cool. Robert, any closing thoughts on Halo Infinite campaign?
I think this is going to be the new standard for whatever Microsoft is putting out, and this is worth the Game Pass in my opinion too. So
yeah,
this is
very exciting.
Very cool.
All right.
Well, cool. Well, I'll do the signature Karch Lo-Fi reviews sign off then, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Bye. That's literally his sign off.
That is what he does.
All right, we can stop recording. That was good. That was really good.
Thank you.